and we will get going. I'll start by sharing my screen, and then we'll move to some examples. So for anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Amy Komicher, and I am with Ohio State Extension, specifically with the Learning and Organizational Development Unit. Today we'll be talking about what exactly an online course or module is. We'll be talking about definitions and what that means to us, why we care. We'll talk about some examples that we have from this realm of course versus module and what that means. And we'll also, after moving through examples, we'll try to think of ways that this can be applied in your own work, and we'll go over a short discussion of how to actually apply it in your own work. So we'll start with these PowerPoint slides, and then I'll move my screen share over to some online examples so you can actually see what this looks like in practice. So first off, we'll start with some definitions of course versus module. A course is often considered in an academic setting a semester-long class, but in reality, in extension, the term course is kind of variable. It could be anything from a day-long offering or an 8-hour time commitment to several weeks of meetings. We have in the extension realm anything that is, you know, a few hours to 9 months, and people call it a course. Module is typically a smaller unit of content that can be consumed in a few hours or less. And again, that definition can vary. Sometimes an extension course with several modules might be, you know, a few hours for the whole course, and each module might take 20 to 30 minutes or something like that. So in reality, what's important is that when you're designing for your own needs, for your own content, you think about how all these pieces might fit together to select what terms you would like to use, and stay consistent and be very clear with your audience what that means in the context of your own offerings. Other terms I've seen have more gamified natures: quest and trek and missions and things like that, and those are often suitable for you know, a non-credit audience, maybe a younger audience, 4-H or something like that. But I've certainly seen those used in adult learning situations as well. So that's another consideration to make, that if a fancier or more interesting and engaging term would fit well with your programming, maybe you think outside the box and you call things treks and quests or whatever you want. So it's important that we don't get too hung up on the terms because they do vary widely. So why does all this matter to us? My main premise in designing courses or modules is to be aware of your audience. Be mindful and meet them where they are. Is your audience kids with a limited attention span? Is your audience adults with full-time jobs and children and a lot of other time commitments? You know, what other considerations do you need to effectively engage with your audience? Do they have seasonal peak work hours where it's really not a good time to be asking them to do things, to participate? Do they need content for any certifications, that sort of thing? So be mindful of all of those aspects when you are determining, you know, how large you want to go with your module or course, and how much content you want to be in there and what you expect from your users who are participating. The other reason this matters is modules and courses they take a lot of time, and we want to be efficient. So by thinking about how all of your content that you've already created in your work can be repackaged and repurposed, saves you a lot of time. If you've made a beautiful handout or PowerPoint slide deck that you use at a face-to-face event, maybe this can be repurposed for another audience or for another delivery mechanism. And this will make the most of your well thought out content and save you time. So this is a way to be efficient and to really expand your content to new audiences, expand your impact without really overloading your time by trying to generate a whole lot of new content. So I have some examples lined up for you today to kind of highlight what a module might look like, what a course might look like, and oops, I forgot one on here. I have one additional example as well. So we'll have 3 examples today. The smallest being this planting decisions module. Then we've got another one, soil and site evaluation for on-site wastewater treatment. Whoa, and a typo in my slides. Good job, Amy. Anyway, and then we've got another one, introduction to veterinary entomology, and I will explain the context of all of those as we go to look at them. And then after we look at examples, especially since we have such a nice small group today, we might be able to have some open discussion about your questions or concerns or ideas you're trying to work through in your own programming. I'm going to leave my slide deck. Can everybody still see my screen? And if somebody could just chime in with a microphone, I do not, oh, there's the chat. Aha, got it. Okay, we can see. All right, so I'm gonna go into this soil and site evaluation for on-site wastewater treatment. What's interesting about this online course, which they have called a segment. So the reason this one is interesting is we have Dr. Karen Mansell and Dr. Brian Slater have been teaching extension offerings related to wastewater treatment for a long time, and they've been wanting to move it online, and they've been teaching it in the form of field days and other work, and this online offering is a supplement to the field days. So the way this is designed is a participant who needs credit to maintain their status as a sanitarian or whatever certificate they hold in relation to wastewater treatment, they're required a certain number of continuing education credits every year. The way this segment was designed was that a participant could complete all of these segments to earn their continuing education credits for the year. Then if they wanted to earn an additional credit, they could attend the in-person field day. So this helps participants show up completely prepared to fully participate in the field day. And for those who are really busy and maybe can't make a synchronous event, this still gives them the opportunity for meaningful engagement with high quality content to maintain their certification for the year. What's interesting about this is they have packaged a whole set of recorded lectures and assignments together into these smaller modules. And from the reports of the original participants, this does take about 6 hours to 8 hours to complete. And the goal was to provide 6 continuing education credits. So we've met that mark really well with this segment. And the interesting thing is Dr. Mansell and Dr. Slater have 3 segments. So this sets their audience up to return to them for 2 more years easily to continue their work in this line of programming and continue to engage with them and maintain their certification for 2 additional years if they choose to complete one segment each year. And in addition to this non-credit offering, the 3 segments that were built have now been repackaged and are in the process of being approved to be a full semester course where the lectures would be more expanded, of course, and all of the students that would be receiving academic credit also have an additional project requirement that's a cumulative scaffolded type project. So it's really interesting to see this online offering that started from a field day, became an online extension offering, and is going to be further repackaged and repurposed to meet some academic credit needs for some programs on the academic credit side. So that is our first example of how content can be repackaged into a course. And again, this course was a 6 to 8 hour time commitment for their continuing education credits. And I will just close this one. And the next one is content that was actually originally in the academic credit realm. And then the professor, Dr. Pete Piermarini, recognized that there were select elements of this content that would be incredibly useful to those in veterinary science for continuing education credits. So vet techs, or maybe even people with the health department who need continuing education credits related to entomology and vectors and disease. So he took out a select set of content from an academic course and reduced some of the assignment requirements and packaged these up into modules for continuing education credits. And this is the first one, there are going to be a few more that come out of the academic credit course that he teaches. This first one is an introductory foundational level module that is meant to be the first, and then the others will focus more closely on specific content of interest to particular groups. So an individual might be interested in another one that's specifically about mosquitoes or specifically about ticks or something like that. So this is an example of content that was repackaged from an academic course and then moved out for an extension audience. And what they've done, what Dr. Piermarini has done is maintains these lecture recordings with closed captions, and again, just sort of reduced some of the assignment requirements for these continuing education credits. So that's our second example. Our third example is probably the simplest and most straightforward example of taking an isolated piece of content from an academic credit environment and moving it to a non-academic credit environment. So this planting decisions module came out of an introduction to agronomy course. It's actually Dr. Dina Nemeth Covert's content, and she's on the call today. Hi, Dina. So what we did is we found out that you know, there's some really applied areas of content from this introduction to agronomy course that could be useful for potentially a certified crop advisor audience. And we broke this down into just a single module, which is one chapter from a digital book. Oops, the link must be broken. Hold on. I think I know what happened here. So from the digital book, a user would be expected to read and interact with a chapter, and this chapter was isolated from the book as well, just to help users stay focused on what they needed. And we added some additional interactive questions to this chapter. I'll see if I can flip through it. So to make this more interactive, we added a few more interactive questions, and then after moving through the content in this chapter, they would go back to the course and take the quiz, and when they scored the appropriate score for the quiz, they would be granted their CEU. This is all still moving through approval processes, but the idea here is this is just a 1 hour CEU, so it's really small, and it's a really focused piece of content. So you don't have to always, if you're moving online, it doesn't always have to be large. It doesn't have to be a whole lot of content. Maybe there are some really small specific pieces that would be utilized on their own as a standalone module for your target audience. And one thing I kind of neglected to do in some of these other courses is just to kind of show you some options for content. So these MP4 files are, I'll just leave student view. I'm not sure what's happening here. So these MP4 files are voiceover PowerPoint, which is a pretty standard content method delivery. It's effective, does include closed captions. We want to be mindful of accessibility. And then this also contains some assigned readings, which are, I think some of these are more popular press type articles and some are journal articles. So you can combine all kinds of content sources to build these modules, and really it just depends on the content you need to convey, the content you already have available to you, and your target audience. Before I leave the screen share with these courses and modules, does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask or anything else they'd like to see in here? I'm going to take the crickets as a no. So I will go back to the PowerPoint and we'll get back into how you might apply this to your own work. So to get started in repackaging and repurposing content, you're going to want to identify who you're trying to reach that you're not already reaching. So in a couple of our examples, we were initially reaching a traditional student audience, and we felt that the content would be highly applicable to industry professionals in whatever industry that might be. And then you want to think about the content that is most valuable to that target audience. So certainly these semester-long courses had, 16 weeks worth of heavy content to pick from, but this extension audience they're not going to be as interested in a huge 16-week time commitment. So we really think about what is most valuable, what is the content that they really need and want. And then break that content down into manageable chunks. For example, in the entomology course, there were several units that could be applicable to the veterinary science professionals, the health department professionals, but in a professional development context, usually a time commitment of more than probably 4 weeks is really difficult for people to manage when they've got full-time jobs and everything else. So think about how you're going to chunk that content out, and then when you've kind of thought about your target audience, what's useful to them, and how you might break that content down to be more more manageable for them to deal with based on their time constraints or whatever considerations. You may also need to reconsider how the content is framed. A lot of times in an academic setting, we scaffold as we go along for a 16-week semester. And a shorter content unit, whether that's a 3-hour extension course or a 1-hour module, um, you need to frame it appropriately for your audience. So you're going to possibly need to reconsider how you provide context for the audience, how this applies to them, how it's useful to them, and make it relevant and to the point for that target audience. And then you're also going to want to consider how you might adjust your assessments, because and it's not necessarily needed to have a 50-question test for a simple exploratory module where someone just wants to personally develop their skill set. Now, maybe with a certification course, that would require more lengthy assessment. So think about the purpose that content, that module or course is fulfilling, and then determine how you want to assess their learning with that. So that's all I have. I really wanted to open up the floor for you all to ask questions, or, maybe raise an idea you have that you haven't quite been able to sort out, and maybe we can all brainstorm together how you might tackle repackaging some content or offering some content to a new target audience.
Hey, Amy, this is Dina. That was a nice overview. Excuse me. I'm curious of our other folks that have attended today. So maybe Dean, Aaron, Kyle, Kylene, are there some things you're thinking about specifically for maybe repackaging or repurposing, or just maybe what specific questions you have? There is some paperwork we have to file if you're going to offer something for non-credit certificate, but I can walk you through that if you have questions on that.
This is Kyle, and really what I'm looking to do is maybe like 3-minute teachings on things for that people will watch, such as here's a tip for successful onboarding of an employee, and just like tips instead of like a testing module or something like that, because one of the things when I've gone to community development conferences before, a lot of people are doing those, and they're increasing their visibility and their success reaching people by just having short snippets that people watch. So I just need to kind of figure out how to do that. A lot of them bought expensive equipment to do that, microphones and that type of thing, and I can't afford that. So I keep looking for other ideas, and again, here's a tip for using your strengths finders, or here's a tip for dealing with difficult people, or something like that, so that we get people, tuning in, but it's not too long.
Mm-hmm. So Kyle, are you thinking like short little video clips, and then would this be people that are already on like that you have connections with, like a listserv of sorts, or a social media platform, or is that what you're trying to work through too?
Well, I think what we're trying to do is build the people that are, actually like on our Facebook page and our social media, presence, our Twitter. I mean, we don't have a lot of followers, so it's kind of got a dual fold, purpose. I mean, we want to build that, and it's one thing, but we'd have to reach what we've got first, and we have other people that are liking what we have and sharing it. Like when we're looking for candidates for jobs, we don't have that many followers on our Facebook page, but I send things out to people that are in the community that are well connected, and they forward it and people share it. But we would like to have more of those people following us. And I've been told by, again, at these conferences that this has been very successful for some people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, are you thinking like these would be like outdoors somewhere, or these videos would be in an office? I don't know exactly where you're located. There are some recording studios on campus.
I'm in Medina, Summit, Lorain County, so I'm in Northeast
Okay.
Ohio. And
So
our
then, probably fall back on like an iPad or even an iPhone. You can usually do reasonable quality with, just the devices you have on hand. And then I think you can usually find some mics that are kind of inexpensive that if you're outdoors would help with the sound issues. And then I don't know what those little tiny tripods cost for like an iPhone, but I don't think they're terribly expensive. So as far as equipment goes, you can look into like smaller scale. Um, and then for video, um, I know admin is working on like the social media guidelines still. I don't quite know what all of that's going to mean, but I think a lot of it is just, you know, branding and accessibility to put our best foot forward in the online presence. Um, so those would be considerations um, for your video pieces. And then since you want them so short, I imagine you would want to focus on like one idea, just a single idea per video, and maybe, frame it. You were talking about dealing with, difficult or troublesome employees, maybe. So maybe frame it from like a scenario, like, have you ever had that person who is, constantly late or whatever it might be, to provide a really good hook to relate to the audience that you're trying to reach.
Yep, that totally makes sense. And I'm just in the early stages, but no, this is very helpful. Thanks.
And Kyle, this is Dina too. You want to make sure you caption those for ADA accessibility. So Amy, I don't know if you have some quick tips for how to do that, maybe for a short clip.
So I guess it kind of also depends on where you're posting your videos. You mentioned you wanted Facebook followers, so I imagine those would be going through Facebook, because Facebook and I believe YouTube don't play very nicely together. But for example, if you record something in Zoom, there's an automatic captioning feature with a transcript that's available. Now, I haven't really worked in Facebook to determine how to move the captions there, but YouTube automatically generates captions as well. There's also a platform called Otter AI that you can use to generate captions, but you can no longer export those captions in a usable caption file for free. So that's a little tricky. I know that some people are really getting into experimenting with Adobe Rush, which is provided through the Adobe Creative Cloud tool set. And I'm pretty sure you can add and edit captions in Adobe Rush. So that might be something to explore. You do need Windows 10 for Adobe Rush.
Okay, thanks.
Dean, how about you? What are you thinking? What's on your mind?
I'm really just kind of barely getting my feet wet at this point, I guess. Just looking for ideas of what other people are doing. Some of our groups and Extension have had discussions about putting modules together, and just kind of wanted to see what might be involved.
Yeah, no, that's great. Excellent. Erin, I see you've got a chat in. I'll go ahead and read that. So you don't have a microphone, no worries. You are looking to move an online base for some of your trainings and really interested in understand how the differences in terminology and how others do things. So that you don't have any specific questions today, you've been attending, yeah, good, all these sessions to learn more and see how you can utilize them, yeah. You know, and kind of along those lines too, if you guys want access to some of the stuff that's been developed, usually we can get you like guest access. Sometimes it's kind of nice to explore some of the models that people have been trying as a as a participant, so you kind of see what your potential audience members will be seeing, and then you can take what works for you and then build from that. So that's Erin. Kylene, did you have anything?
Yeah, I think where we are tripping up is the accreditation process for some of this content that we think would be valuable for professionals. So we have a good handle on the content creation and repackaging, but it's just identifying those accreditation bodies and working through their process.
Got it. So you're finding the professional societies that might be granting the CEU credits.
Right.
Got it. Now, Kylene, have I shared with you guys the form that you can fill out now to let the university know when you're offering something for non-credit?
No, I would love to see it though.
Okay, so I'll do that. I'll email it. I'll email it to all of you guys, actually. It's not an approval form. So the university in the last few months has kind of set in a new process. So if you are offering anything for certification for a non-credit audience, then they want to know about it. And so there's a form where you kind of just, you kind of give the title, if it's being offered for CEU credits, who's giving the CEUs, and just a brief description of it a little bit. It doesn't take long to fill out. And then that goes to academic affairs groups. So Kylene, I think that would go to SCNR. I'm a little bit unclear if it goes to the departments or if you can just take it right to the college academic affairs committees. Jean Osborne has helped us with a couple already. Well, for one for sure. There's another group that's going through. It's not, they don't approve it. It's just for them to be aware of what's going on. And then it goes on to the Office of Academic Affairs. And then I think what they do is at the end of the year, then they're kind of tallying, what our impact is as a college and university for non-credit. And partly where this spun out of is what I'm hearing is the Higher Education Learning Commission, when they were kind of taking a look at our programs, said, hey, whoa, did you realize you have all these non-credit things going on? And they weren't being reported uniformly. And so that's kind of what it is. So at first it kind of seems like it's for approval, but it's not. You're just reporting what you're doing. And it's only if you're offering a non-credit event or online course for certification. So if you are getting CEU credits from another place, then you'll need to report it. But I'm happy to share it. I'll show you with you guys a template as well as an example that we've used with Digital Ag, so you can kind of see how we filled it out. But I think, Kylene, you're right on. By trying to align with a professional society, which routinely grants the CEU credits, then you do have to get approval from them. Sometimes they'll look at your content a little bit. Some are a little bit easier than others, but then you'll have automatic access to that target audience a little bit easier than trying to generate that. Yep. Yeah, Erin, I see your note. So I'll send it to all of you. I think we've got the registration list. So when we send out the link for today's recording, I'll include the forms there too.
Thanks for including all that information, Dina.
Yeah, no, that's some of the administrative logistics that I deal with.
Yes.
You do the fun part, Amy.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for handling that part.
And one other thing I might kind of point out that Amy was talking about, so, she's talking about re-looking at your assessments if you're going from a credit audience to a non-credit audience. And one thing that I found useful, this is with agronomy folks or plant breeding folks, is, okay, so if I take like a 3-credit semester-based long course, I tend to break it into 3 1-credit size modules. And then I tend to just have the non-credit audience do like automatic quiz grading type of assessments. That way they don't write papers, they don't go into detail with any exams. We do give them something to do. That way they are working with the content and not just mindlessly listening to videos, or if it's a live presentation, just kind of checking out. But something that's a little bit easier. That way it doesn't take so much time on the instructor part to grade all those, but yet it's enough to help the audience be engaged a little bit there. And then too, if you have someone who decides later, hey, I'd like to do this for credit, then they just come back and sign up for the credit version and then do those other assignments that they did not go into detail with. And that tends to work pretty good as far as like separating things out. And then obviously when Amy was using an example with Karen and Brian, where they're going from an extension offering and repackaging for credit, then what they're doing is adding to that body then, some more in-depth, assignments to do that you would expect a credit earner to go through. But it works great. It's a good way to get extra mileage and extra impact for the content you develop. So we've had some good success with it. Any other questions or thoughts, you guys? So Dean, I don't know if we're like helping you tip your toe in the water, if we just gave you a fire hydrant drink.
No, it was good seeing some of the examples that you put up. I appreciate that.
Awesome.
I'm glad those were helpful. Well, I don't have really anything else prepared for today. So if anybody wants to stay on the line and discuss any items of interest, I'm happy to stay a while. I mean, I've got 20 more minutes blocked off for this, but I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.